Coming up next on the Jeff Crilley Show, you'll meet a couple who took their pain and turned it into purpose, the parents behind Friends of Vail, next.
Many are predicting that the worst is yet to come, which is unfortunate, said one person here. Until now, they've enjoyed the reputation of being the nation's icebox.
Watched a burglar in his home this morning by webcam.
As a journalist of over 25 years, stories are what make my world turn.
Reporting live from the Dallas newsroom tonight, Jeff Crilley, Fox 4 News.
But in 2008, I took the jump from my familiar life and started a PR firm from my home.
We're talking about anyone with a camcorder like the one I'm using becomes a television network.
We started slowly growing the company, and we now have over 100 clients, and we've branched into the world of live digital broadcasting. I now own 8 different TV studios and have a huge team, and the stories that I now get to share are sometimes the most important of my life. Life has a funny way of coming around full circle. This is the Jeff Crilley Show.
Well, I don't know about you, but I think anyone of a certain age wants to find meaning with their life. They want to get up for a reason. They want to know what their legacy is. And my next couple knows exactly what their legacy is going to be. Susan and Chad Chance, they are the parents and the founders of Friends of Vail. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having us.
Very cool. Let's start with you, Susan. What is Friends of Vail?
Friends of Vail is a foundation that we started shortly after our 9-year-old daughter passed away in her sleep. And we just knew that she had a special spirit, and she had an adult's mind. She knew what she wanted to do, and we just wanted to continue her legacy and share her love for learning, her love for life, her love for people, and encourage others to have that same, spirit that she had.
Sure. Chad, after this devastating loss, how long did it take for you guys to come up with this idea of Friends of Vail?
Well, it started maybe a week. Jade, our oldest daughter, stayed home from school for a week, and she was ready to go back to school. And so when we were on our way back to school, God just laid it on my heart that we needed to start this foundation. And we had no idea. We had never been through anything like this before. And so we just started piecing it together. And we had some friends that came over to our house. Our house was full of people, and we just started talking amongst ourselves, and one of the ladies that was one of our friends that helped with counseling the kids, she said, I want to get all the Friends of Vail together. Not Vail's friends, but the Friends of Vail. And so it just stuck. And so that was really how the name of Friends of Vail came about. So,
sure. Well, as I was doing homework for this show, I found a wonderful video. You did an interview a couple of years ago. Let's go ahead and roll that.
Cameron Kickletter here for HGTV show coverage, and I am incredibly excited to have Susan and Chad here from Friends of Vail. You guys have such an amazing story. I've been talking to people all week long, and so I'm very excited and grateful that you're here to sit down and do this. So
thank you for having us.
Yeah. So for people who don't know, can you just give like a quick overview of what Friends of Vail is?
Okay. Well, the background story, of course, we have 2 daughters, Jade and Vail. And in 2016, we came to Youth Nationals. Both girls showed. They were 11 and 9. And a month after leaving the show, Vail passed away extremely unexpectedly in her sleep on August 31st, 2016. And it was shortly after that we had been speaking with the guidance counselor, about Jade and Vail and, all of the friends that Vail knew were getting together for counseling. And she kept calling it the Friends of Vail. And so when we were driving Jade to school, I think one of the first days she went back after the funeral, Chad was really the one that said, I want to start a foundation in Vail's honor, and I want to call it the Friends of Vail. And so that's like how the conversation started, because we just knew what a special kid she was. And her funeral was full of kids. Afterwards, everyone was at our house, we were realizing how much impact she had on so many in her life. And it was like, we need to continue that on with her story and her spirit and her love of others.
I mean, it's such a soulful story. When I started to prepare this show, I was like, just don't cry, Jeff.
I feel the same way.
We feel the same way every time.
So I want to pull up your website, because you have a beautifully done website, and as we scroll down the website, what a beautiful picture of Vail, and you do so many things. I know one of your passions is childhood literacy. Let's talk about that for a couple of minutes. Why is that such a thing for you?
When Jade was first born, my pediatrician railed it into my head that you need to read 2 books to her every night, even when she's an infant, when they're not paying attention. And he was right. That was a very precious time that both of us spent with the girls every night. Story time was it grew from 2 books to 5 books to 10 books to, we need to go to bed. But that was really important to us. And we realized both girls were so ahead in reading and so many areas of their education just because of all the reading that we did. And so I want to instill that in others, that it's such precious time, and it doesn't have to be an hour. We just spend a lot of time, but sharing that time with your kids and encouraging them to read really grows their minds. I mean, readers are leaders. We hear about that a lot, and I can tell you in my girls' situations that it really impacted their lives.
We're going to talk more about your daughter's books in a minute. I want to stick with you, Chad. Let's talk about the foundation. Let's talk about the checks. And as we talk about this, I want to pull up the page on the website where you're giving away checks, because this actually goes on for miles. Tell us about how you award the checks. Who are the recipients?
Well, the recipients at the horse shows, the kids, one of the requirements is for them to compete. And so we go to the class prior to the kids showing, make sure they're in the warm-up arena, and then they go into the class. And then it's really pretty simple. We literally have numbers torn off, and I put them in my cap. Susie and I pray over it, and we stick our hand in there, and we draw them out. And, because they're 1 through 15 or 8 or however many is in the class. And we always pick 2 just in case something happens. And so we pick the number out, and it goes right to the child. And then right then we have the big checks. Susie writes their names on there. And when they're in their lineup, after they've competed, before they are announced winners or first, second, third through whatever place they go to, then we walk out and the announcer says some information about our foundation, and then we award that check. And in the beginning, they were $250. Then they went to $500, and we've been blessed with our fundraiser every year, and now we're up to $1,500. And the seniors this year will get $3,000.
Outstanding. And the money has to be used towards some kind of educational purpose.
That's correct.
That's correct. It has to be used for educational purposes. And we have donors that specifically donate to our foundation for different shows for these scholarships. So it's fantastic.
Wow. My most favorite part about this segment is the books.
Yes.
So before we hold up the first book, Susan, why don't you tell the story of your daughter's books?
So Vail, I had a first grade teacher that inspired the kids to write, and she would teach them how to make little books, cover pages, title pages, and Vail really took off. And she had told us the day before she passed, walking up from the barn, she said, "Mama, I want to be an author when I grow up." And at the time I was thinking, well, okay, you're 9, but whatever you think. And then, of course, she passed away that next day, and we began looking through her stories for her funeral, because some of the kids read some of her stories she had written at the funeral. And we both talked about it, and I said, "Chad, I want to make this happen. Like, we can make her dream come true." And so that's when we began the search for the author. And then we came upon the illustrator, and it all began that way.
Okay, why don't you grab the first book, and we'll go through the books one by one. Why don't you tell us what the first one was about?
The first one is called Vail's Tales, and there were a lot of learning curves when we published this book, but it has 4 stories that were read at her funeral by her friends. Several of her best friends got up and read, and it was super special to us. And so her teachers sat around our couch one day and selected these stories. 3 of them were written when she was in first grade, so she was 6 or 7 years old. One of them was written the week she passed. And that one's extremely special because it's called A Good Friend. And she talks about, I think she leaves us this story about how we are a good friend to others and we invite them to sit with us when they're alone and, just how to be a good friend. And so each of these stories were rewritten by the author and re-illustrated in a rhyme, which I had researched. Rhyming is really a great way to read to your children. It really sticks in their mind better. But behind each story, there is her original handwriting and her illustration. Wow. So you can see the original inspiration of the story.
That's amazing. Why don't you grab the second one?
And yes, this is the second one, Party Animal.
Well, what's this about?
This one is actually, we realized after publishing the first book that it's more cost effective to do 2 stories instead of 4. So this one has 2 stories, and this one and the third book were completed during COVID because we had an extended time. But this one, there's a story called The Sleepy Zoo. And, she goes to the zoo with her friends, and it's like, why are the animals all sleepy? Well, come to find out, they're party animals. So they're up all night partying, and during the day, they're exhausted. And, there's an elephant laying in a hammock with roller skates and a party hat, but he's asleep, So it's just a very whimsical story that includes animals that were a part of her life in it as well, which makes it fun.
Okay, and you have to be impressed as you're going through your daughter's stories. You're like, wow, that's very clever.
Exactly. I mean, it's shocking when you think of her not being 9. She was actually 6 and 7
when she wrote
these. And a lot of people think, wow, for a 9-year-old, that's great. It is, but she was younger than that.
Sure. Well, we'll have Chad do the other 2.
Yep.
Okay. Chad, go ahead and hold them up. And
this one's called Fishing for Trouble. And this one's pretty cool because I used to have my hair that long. So the illustrator...
we saw that. We saw that in the video.
So the illustrator just went through and put some great personal pictures in here. And this one we absolutely love. She's just talking about, and as you go through here, the crazy ocean trip, she's talking about sharks and, just her imagination was unbelievable. And what I really love about it is that the author and illustrator included her stories in here. So you can see from what a 7-year-old, a 6 and 7-year-old's mind was and how they left her original story in here.
Wow.
And so it's pretty amazing. So there's 2 stories in this one as well. And the brand new book that we're so excited about is Just Call Me Larry. And Just Call Me Larry is really one. And it's the first one that this entire book is one story. And so we're extremely excited about this. The name of the book, there is a lot of history with a friend of ours that just recently passed away, Larry Jerome, who the book is actually named after. And we went through a long story because Vail, this heavy rat, his name was Fatso. And so it's really hard to call somebody Fatso, even though it's funny, and to put it on the cover or name a title of a book, Fatso, the big fat rat. So we changed it, and his name is Larry because the story takes place in Hawaii, and our family through Larry Jerome got to spend time in his house in Hawaii, and it just laid the foundation for Vail and her imagination for the story. And Larry meets a horse, and they become friends, and through a series of issues in their lives, they become buddies, and it is a wonderful, wonderful story.
Wow.
And it's brand new. We really only have at an auction, a benefit auction for an education foundation. We donated all 4 books, and they sold, and it was the first first hardback that's actually been out thus far.
Sure. And the proceeds from the books go straight back into the nonprofit.
To the foundation, yes, sir.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
I can't even imagine, what you've gone through these last few years, and nothing heals that hole in your heart. To other parents who are going through grief, what's your advice on how to get up every morning and find purpose?
Well, the first thing, of course, that I always hang my hope on is my faith. We're a very strong Christian family. We knew what Vail believed. In one of her stories, she told the story of the gospel of Christ. And so we have hope in that. We know where she is. Where do you go from there? It doesn't make it easier. God doesn't promise that, it's going to be easy, but he does promise to comfort us. And so for us, talking about her and sharing her story is very healing. And I feel through all the studies I've done and spoken with those who have lost loved ones that they want to talk about their loved one. And it can be very uncomfortable for people around us to want to talk about her, but we're bold and we just do. And so, and certainly, her life and the way she lived it is a model. And I feel like that it is my job as her mom and Chad's job as her dad to share that with others so that kids there are kids that look up to Vail that never met her. There are kids whose lives have been changed because of the way she lived. And so, for me, it's a purpose every day to wake up and share our faith and our hope, and then also share the person that she was with others so that they can also have that hope.
Sure. Chad, I know she's on your heart all the time, and you're probably having ongoing conversations with her. I imagine her in heaven right now just smiling down on this segment and saying, Mom, Dad, so proud of what you're doing with, my memory.
Yeah, no doubt about it. She was such a blessing to me. I was her bonus dad, right? And, but she brought so much joy to my life. It was just amazing. And she loved me and I loved her unconditionally. And we were a lot alike. And we had a lot of fun together. And she was just the sweetest, kindest human, extremely smart. And she, she's in a time capsule, right? She lives, she passed away when she was 9. And so she lives in that time capsule. And so we have those fond memories. And her sister Jade has gone through other things in life. She's grown up, gone through, growing up, she's now in college. And it's just really brought Jade and I closer as well. And so it's just such a blessing to have both of those girls in my life. I just thank God every day.
What would Vail think of your new hairdo?
She wouldn't like it. Jade doesn't either.
They would not approve. She would not approve.
But, for almost 40 years, I was in a career that I could have any hairdo I wanted. And I've recently changed careers, and I had to change a little. So.
There you go. All right, Susan, let's give you the final word. What would you like to leave the audience with? Final thoughts.
Final thoughts. As a mother, I would say, we have to cherish every moment that we have on this earth with the people that we love, and to tell them, don't shy away from telling someone that you love them. And I find myself uncomfortably telling people all the time, I love you, I love you. And, with Vail, I know in my heart that she knew she was loved. I kissed her goodnight that night after reading, and I have zero regrets. So my advice would be just love with no regrets. Don't let time go by or be too busy to love on each other.
Wow. This may be one of my favorite shows of all time. Thank you so much for blessing us with your story and the memories of Vail. We're going to end with the website, which is, of course, friendsofvail.com. Chad and Susan, thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you for having us.
That's it for now. We'll see you next time.